I'm Samantha, 28, and I stood alone at my college graduation, scanning rows of beaming families for the two empty seats that belonged to my parents. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Sorry, honey, we're at Amber's surprise promotion party. So proud of your sister." My fingers trembled, clutching the phone that had just transferred this month's rent payment to their account. 3 years I'd been carrying their financial burden after Dad's layoff. Looking down at my diploma, summa cum laude in computer science, I made a decision that would change everything. They'd chosen Amber's assistant manager promotion over my graduation. I chose myself over their rent. Before I dive into this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If my experience sounds familiar, hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of people learning to value themselves. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this unfolds. I grew up in a modest, split-level house in Medford, a suburb just outside Boston. On paper, we were your typical middle-class family. My father worked in corporate management, my mother was a part-time receptionist, and my sister Amber and I attended the local public schools. But beneath that ordinary exterior lay a family dynamic that was anything but balanced. From my earliest memories, the pattern was clear. Amber was the golden child, and I was, well, the other one. 3 years younger than me, Amber had our parents wrapped around her finger with her outgoing personality and perpetual neediness. I was the quiet, responsible one who learned early on that the fastest way to get approval was through achievement, though even that strategy had its limitations. The contrasts in how we were treated were subtle at first, but became glaringly obvious as we grew older. When I was 12, I qualified for the state mathematics competition. It fell on the same weekend as Amber's dance recital, a routine beginner's performance in the local community center. There was never any question about which event my parents would attend. "Amber needs us there," my mother explained while dropping me off at the school bus for the competition. "You'll be fine on your own. You always are." I won second place. No one was there to see it. By 16, I was working weekends and summers at the local grocery store, saving every dollar for college. Meanwhile, Amber received a weekly allowance that exceeded my daily pay. When she turned 16, our parents surprised her with a used Honda Civic. When I asked about getting a car, my father laughed. "You're so responsible with money, Samantha. We know you can save up for one yourself." And I did. It took me nearly 2 years, but I purchased a 10-year-old Toyota with 120,000 miles on it. I drove it to my high school graduation, where my parents spent most of the ceremony filming Amber's dance team performance during the opening procession. Despite the imbalance, I excelled academically. My perfect GPA and impressive SAT scores earned me a substantial scholarship to Northeastern University. Not a full ride, but enough that with my savings and part-time work, I could manage without burdening my parents. I remember my father's words at my acceptance dinner. "That's our Samantha, always finding a way to make things work." I was halfway through my sophomore year when everything changed. Dad was laid off from the company where he'd worked for 15 years. At 54, with a specialized skill set and an industry moving toward younger talent, his job prospects dimmed with each passing month. Their savings dwindled rapidly. Mom picked up extra receptionist shifts, but it wasn't enough to cover their mortgage, car payments, and Amber's community college tuition. The first call came during finals week. Mom's voice was tight with suppressed tears as she explained they might lose the house. Without thinking, I offered the money I'd been saving for a summer coding boot camp. It was supposed to be temporary just until Dad found another position. That temporary situation stretched into months, then years. I took a full-time position at a software company while carrying a full course load. My grades suffered slightly, dropping from a 4 to a 3.85, but I managed to stay on the dean's list while sending home $1,500 monthly for their rent after they downsized to an apartment. All the while, Amber continued her leisurely path through community college, changing majors 3 times before settling on business administration. When she landed an entry-level position at a local marketing firm, my parents celebrated with a dinner that cost more than I made in a day. "Your sister is really finding her way," Mom gushed over the phone. "Not everyone can be academically gifted like you, but she's got such people skills." Despite everything, I felt proud approaching graduation. I'd managed to climb back to a 3.92 gigapascals, earning summa cum laude honors while working 40 hours weekly. My professors had recognized my dedication, and I'd secured a promising position with a tech startup set to begin the month after graduation. The week before the ceremony, I called home specifically to confirm arrangements. "We wouldn't miss it for the world," Mom assured me. "Dad's got the video camera charged, and we've made lunch reservations for after." I allowed myself to believe them. After all those years of showing up for everyone else, I thought just this: once they would show up for me. Graduation morning dawned bright and clear, a perfect New England May day with cherry blossoms dotting the campus. I woke early, a flutter of excitement in my stomach as I carefully ironed my dress, a splurge from Nordstrom that had cost me a week's grocery money, but felt worth it for the occasion. I arranged my cap, adjusted the gold summa cum laude cords around my neck, and took a selfie to send to my parents with the caption, "Getting ready." Mom replied almost instantly, "You look beautiful. We're leaving in an hour. Save us seats near the front." The campus was transformed into a sea of black gowns and colorful regalia. I joined the throng of graduates assembling in the athletic center, exchanging nervous smiles with classmates I'd barely seen outside of late-night study sessions since taking on my full-time job. Around me, people were taking group photos, introducing parents to professors, and laughing about shared memories from the past 4 years. "My parents are driving up from New York," said James, a computer science classmate. "They're bringing my grandparents too." "What about yours?" "They should be here by now," I said, checking my phone again. No new messages. We filed out toward the main quadrangle where rows of white chairs stretched across the normally open green space. The stage at the front was decorated with the university's blue and gold banners fluttering in the gentle breeze. Faculty members in their academic regalia created a colorful border along the processional path. As we took our seats in the alphabetical arrangement, I craned my neck, scanning the family section for my parents. The ceremony was due to start in 15 minutes, and I couldn't spot them. I sent a quick text. "Where are you? Ceremony starting soon." No response. The university president took the stage, his voice booming through the speakers as he welcomed everyone to this milestone celebration. I was barely listening, my attention divided between his speech and the continuing absence of any response from my parents. Maybe they were stuck in traffic. Maybe they couldn't find parking. Maybe their phones had died simultaneously. The student speaker was halfway through her address about journeys and new beginnings when my phone vibrated. Relief washed over me as I discreetly checked the message. It evaporated instantly. "Samantha, so sorry, but we won't make it. Amber got surprising news she's been promoted to assistant manager. Her boss called an impromptu celebration at Maggiano's for the team and specifically asked for family to come for the announcement. We couldn't say no, it's such a big moment for her career. We'll make it up to you. Maybe dinner next weekend? Take lots of pictures. Love you." The message was accompanied by a selfie of my parents with Amber, all three grinning widely, champagne flutes raised in the foreground. I stared at the phone until the screen went dark, then looked up to realize the dean of my college had begun calling names. My row was standing, moving toward the stage. My body followed automatically while my mind reeled. Samantha Marie Hayes, summa cum laude, Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. I walked across the stage, my carefully rehearsed smile frozen in place. The dean shook my hand, handed me the diploma case, and whispered congratulations. I nodded, turned toward the audience for the official photo, and faced hundreds of cheering families, none of them mine. Afterward, there was a flurry of group photos with classmates and professors. Rachel, my closest friend despite our limited time together over the past 2 years, immediately noticed something was wrong. "Where are your parents?" she asked as we posed for yet another picture. "They couldn't make it," I said, the words sticking in my throat. Something came up. Rachel's expression darkened. "Are you serious? After everything?" "It's fine," I cut her off, not wanting to break down in the middle of the celebration. But it wasn't fine. Not when we moved to the restaurant for the post-graduation lunch I'd reserved for 5 people, myself, my parents, Rachel, and her boyfriend, and our server kept asking when the rest of our party would arrive. "They're not coming," I finally said, canceling the untouched place settings. Rachel's parents spotted us from across the restaurant where they were celebrating with her brother. They immediately came over, her mother enveloping me in a warm hug. "We are so proud of you," Mrs. Goldstein said, squeezing my shoulders. "Top of your class while working full-time. What an accomplishment." I nearly broke down then, the simple acknowledgement from someone else's mother almost undoing me completely. The lunch passed in a blur. I picked at my food while Rachel shot concerned glances my way. Afterward, I drove home alone, the graduation cap sitting on my passenger seat like a silent accusation. I pulled into my parents' driveway and sat there for several minutes, tears streaming down my face. Their cars weren't there still at Amber's celebration, 3 hours and counting. I used my key to enter the silent house, climbed the stairs to my childhood bedroom, and collapsed onto the twin bed that remained unchanged since high school. It was there, staring at the academic achievement certificates that papered my walls, certificates my parents had never seen me receive, that something inside me finally, irrevocably broke. I must have fallen asleep, because I woke to the sound of laughter and the front door slamming. Glancing at my phone, I saw it was past 8 p.m. My parents and Amber had been celebrating her promotion for over 7 hours. I still can't believe Mr. Daniels said I was the future of the company. Amber's voice floated up the stairs. "Do you think that means I'll be regional manager by next year?" "Nothing would surprise me," came my father's reply, his voice warm with pride. "My little girl, moving up in the world." I sat up, rubbing my eyes, and noticed something I hadn't seen earlier. In the corner of my room, partially hidden in my closet, were 2 gift bags with graduation-themed tissue paper hastily stuffed inside. I pulled them out. One contained a Starbucks gift card for $50 and a generic "Congrats" grad card from Hallmark, unsigned. The other held a department store sweater, size medium. I wear small. Afterthoughts. Last-minute purchases they hadn't even bothered to bring to the ceremony. I took a deep breath and walked downstairs. "Oh, Samantha!" My mother startled when she saw me. "I didn't know you were here. How was the ceremony?" She didn't approach for a hug, didn't offer congratulations. The 3 of them stood in the kitchen, empty champagne glasses on the counter, takeout containers from Maggiano's spread across the table. "It was fine," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "How was Amber's promotion party?" "It was amazing," Amber gushed, holding out her wrist to display a new watch. "Look what Mom and Dad got me, white gold with diamond accents, for being the youngest assistant manager in company history." The watch glinted under the kitchen lights. I recognized the brand. It retailed for over $600, more than my parents had ever spent on any gift for me. "That's nice," I managed. "I got your text, Mom, about missing my graduation." An uncomfortable silence fell over the kitchen. My father cleared his throat. "These things happen, kiddo. You know how it is. We couldn't say no to Amber's boss. It was important for her career. And my graduation wasn't important?" The question hung in the air. My mother sighed. "Samantha, you've always been so independent. We knew you'd be fine without us there. You've never needed the same kind of support as your sister." "The same kind of support?" I repeated incredulously. "I've been paying your rent for 3 years. Here we go." Amber rolled her eyes. "Saint Samantha, always keeping score." "I'm not keeping score," I said. "I'm stating facts. I worked 40 hours a week while finishing my degree so you wouldn't lose your apartment, and you couldn't spare 3 hours for my graduation. Now you're just being selfish." My father's voice hardened. "After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me lately, Dad?" The words came out before I could stop them. His face reddened. "We raised you. We put a roof over your head. We supported your education." "My scholarship and job supported my education," I corrected. "And for the past 3 years, I've been putting a roof over your heads." "It's just a ceremony," my mother interjected. "Just walking across a stage. We're proud of you anyway. You don't need the pomp and circumstance. You've always been good at school." "Just a ceremony," I echoed. But Amber's impromptu work party was unmissable. "That's different," my father insisted. "Amber needed us there. Her success isn't as guaranteed as yours." What your father means, my mother jumped in, is that you've always been the achiever. Amber needs more encouragement. And what about what I need? I asked quietly. Amber snorted. What you need is to stop being so dramatic. Not everything is about you, Samantha. I looked at her, my younger sister, wearing a watch worth half a month's rent, celebrating a promotion to assistant manager at a small marketing firm like she'd just been named CEO, completely oblivious to the financial sacrifices I'd made so she could live comfortably while meandering through her education and early career. You're right, Amber, I said, surprising them all. Not everything is about me. Apparently, nothing is. See? You're being ungrateful again, my father accused. Bringing up the rent money like we're some charity case? We're your parents, Samantha. Family helps family. I looked around at their faces, my father indignant, my mother martyred, Amber smug, and realized with perfect clarity that the relationship had only ever worked in one direction. I was their support, never the supported. I'm going to bed, I said finally, unwilling to continue a conversation that was clearly going nowhere. Congratulations on your promotion, Amber. I retreated to my childhood bedroom, closed the door softly behind me, and pulled out my laptop. As they continued their celebration downstairs, I researched my parents' lease agreement, tenant rights in Massachusetts, and exactly how much notice I needed to give before stopping payments. The answer was 30 days. 1 month until financial freedom. The following Tuesday, I sat in the sleek downtown office of Melissa Werner, the financial advisor I'd found through my company's employee assistance program. She peered at me over reading glasses as she reviewed the spreadsheets I'd prepared detailing my financial history with my parents. So, over the past 3 years, you've provided approximately $1,500 per month to your parents for their rent, she summarized, tapping her tablet screen. That's $54,000, not accounting for additional contributions to utilities, groceries, or other expenses. Hearing the total spoken aloud made my stomach clench. $54,000. A down payment on a modest home. A significant chunk of student loans. A year of freedom to travel or pursue passion projects. And this arrangement began when your father lost his job, correct? Melissa continued. Yes, I confirmed. He was laid off 3 years ago. He's 57 now. And has he found new employment since then? No, I said. Then hesitated. At least, that's what they've told me. He's had interviews, but nothing has panned out. Melissa nodded, making notes. Your personal budget is extremely tight. You've been living on approximately 30% of your income after taxes, which is well below the recommended allocation for someone at your career stage. She showed me a pie chart of where my money had been going, the largest slice, over 50%, to my parents. The smallest, barely visible at 3%, to savings. You've also declined your company's 401k match, she observed. That's essentially leaving free money on the table. I couldn't afford to make the contributions, I explained. No, you couldn't, because you were paying someone else's rent. Her directness was refreshing. Samantha, I specialize in helping young professionals establish healthy financial foundations. What you're describing is not sustainable and, frankly, not normal. I shifted uncomfortably. They're family. Yes, they are. And in healthy family dynamics, parents strive to set their children up for financial success, not the other way around, especially not at your age and career stage. After mapping out what my finances could look like without the burden of my parents' rent, Melissa encouraged me to gather more information before making any decisions. She suggested I speak with my parents' landlord to understand their rental situation better. The next day, I called Brookside Properties and asked to speak with the property manager about my parents' unit. I explained that I had been paying their rent and needed to verify some information. Let me pull up their account, the manager, David, said. After a brief pause, Hayes, Unit 204 at Parkview Apartments, correct? That's right. I see the rent payments coming from your account each month. What information did you need? I'm curious about the terms of their lease. Is it month-to-month or annual? They're on a standard 12-month lease that renews each September, David explained. Their current lease runs through September 30th. And what's the required notice period if they or I needed to stop payments? 30 days written notice is required to terminate the lease outside the renewal period, with a 2-month early termination fee. However, he paused. I should mention that your father contacted us recently about their renewal options. He mentioned they might be upgrading to one of our premium units now that he's back at work. I froze. My father is working? There was an awkward pause. Yes. According to our records, he provided updated employment information about 6 months ago when they requested a maintenance upgrade. He's listed as an operations manager at Corbin Industries. 6 months. My father had been employed for half a year while I continued to drain my savings and live on ramen to cover their rent. After thanking David and ending the call, I sat motionless, trying to process this information. 6 months of deception. 6 months of unnecessary sacrifice. With shaking hands, I called Rachel. I need a favor, I said when she answered. Can you check if Amber's actually living with my parents? You drive past their complex on your way to work. Rachel didn't ask questions. 2 days later, she called back. Sam, I've driven by at different times for the past 2 days. Amber's car isn't there, not even overnight. Are you sure? Maybe she parked it somewhere else. I'm sure. But there's more. I followed her after work yesterday. Don't judge me, but I saw her Instagram story about happy hour and figured I could catch her. She drove to North Village Luxury Apartments. Used a key card to enter the garage and everything. North Village was one of the most expensive rental properties in the area, featuring a pool, fitness center, and concierge service. Monthly rates started at $2,200. That weekend, I visited my parents unannounced, arriving early Saturday morning. My mother was surprised to see me but welcomed me in for coffee. My father was reading the newspaper at the kitchen table. I thought I'd help you organize some paperwork today, I said casually. Maybe we could look at your budget, see if there are ways to reduce expenses. My mother exchanged a quick glance with my father. That's thoughtful, dear, but unnecessary. We're managing fine. I insist, I said, keeping my tone light. It's the least I can do. After some resistance, they allowed me access to their filing cabinet. Within an hour, I had discovered everything I needed to know. My father's job offer letter dated 6 months prior, showing a starting salary of $85,000. Credit card statements revealing purchases at high-end restaurants, clothing stores, and most painfully a $3,200 charge for an all-inclusive resort in Cancun booked for the following month, and a check stub in Amber's name from the marketing firm showing a modest but reasonable salary for a recent graduate. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. My parents had maintained the fiction of financial hardship to keep my support flowing while they rebuilt their lifestyle. Amber had moved into her own luxury apartment months ago, but maintained the pretense of living at home when I visited. The money I'd scraped together from my entry-level salary money that had prevented me from building savings, contributing to retirement, or even buying new clothes, had been funding their comfort while they lied to my face. That afternoon, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Patel, the therapist I'd started seeing after the graduation incident. What you're describing is financial exploitation, she said after I relayed my discoveries. It's a form of family abuse that doesn't get discussed often enough. Abuse seems like a strong word, I protested weakly. Is it? They've systematically prioritized their wants over your needs, misrepresented their situation to extract resources from you, and responded with emotional manipulation when you questioned the arrangement. Put that way, it was hard to argue. The pattern you're describing, the golden child and scapegoat dynamic between you and your sister, the expectation that you'll sacrifice while they indulge this, doesn't develop overnight. Has this been the family pattern for as long as you can remember? As we explored my childhood memories, patterns emerged that I had normalized but were far from healthy. Dr. Patel helped me see that my hesitation to set boundaries stemmed from years of conditioning to put my family's needs before my own. Separating financially is your right, she assured me. It's not abandonment. It's appropriate adulting. Your parents are capable of supporting themselves, they've proven that. They simply prefer having your additional support to fund their lifestyle. That evening, Rachel offered me her spare bedroom until I could find a place of my own. You need a clean break, she insisted. Somewhere they can't show up unannounced and guilt you. As I packed a suitcase with essentials, The reality of what I was about to do settled over me. I was choosing myself perhaps for the first time. The prospect was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. I chose Sunday dinner to make my announcement. My mother had prepared pot roast, my favorite, which might have seemed thoughtful if I hadn't realized it was likely strategic. They knew something was off after my information gathering mission the previous weekend. Amber was present, maintaining the charade that she still lived with our parents. We were halfway through the meal when I cleared my throat. "I need to discuss something important," I began, setting down my fork. "I've been reviewing my finances, and I've made a decision. I'll be stopping the rent payments after next month." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father stared at me as if I'd announced I was moving to Mars. "What are you talking about?" he finally managed. "I've been paying your rent for 3 years," I said. "That arrangement needs to end. I'll cover next month to give you time to adjust your budget, but after that, you're on your own." My father's face flushed dark red. "You can't do that. We depend on that money." "You haven't depended on it for at least 6 months, Dad. Not since you started at Corbin Industries." His expression confirmed everything. Next to him, my mother's eyes widened. "You've been investigating us?" she asked, voice rising with indignation. "I called your landlord to give notice," I explained. "He mentioned Dad's employment update. After that, yes, I looked into things." "You had no right," my father exploded, pounding his fist on the table. "Our financial matters are private. They stopped being private when you asked me to pay your rent," I countered. "When I sacrificed my financial security for yours, after everything we've done for you," my mother interjected tearfully. "We gave you life, raised you, put clothes on your back and food in your mouth. This is how you repay us?" "I've repaid you with $54,000 over the past 3 years," I said quietly. "I think we're even." Amber, who had been uncharacteristically silent, finally spoke. "This is so like you, Samantha. Always making everything dramatic." So Mom and Dad fudged the details a little bit. They deserved a break after struggling for so long. "A break," I repeated. "Is that what we're calling it? Dad's been employed at a good salary for half a year while I've been living on ramen to make rent payments you didn't need." "We're your parents," my father growled. "We don't need to justify ourselves to you." "Actually, you do when you're taking my money," I countered. "And it stops now." What followed was the most painful 2 hours of my life. My father veered between rage, "You ungrateful little," and threats, "You'll regret this when you need our help." My mother alternated between tears, "How could you abandon us like this?" and martyrdom, "I gave up my career to raise you." Amber simply went on the attack, pulling out every insecurity and vulnerability I'd ever revealed to her. "You're just jealous because I have friends and a life. And all you have is work," she sneered. "You're going to end up alone with your computer and your cats because you're too uptight for anyone to love." When none of that swayed me, they changed tactics. My father claimed the stress would worsen his high blood pressure. My mother suggested I might need psychiatric help for becoming so cold and detached from your family. By the time I left, the mask had completely slipped. These people weren't concerned about losing my financial support because they needed it. They were angry about losing control over me. The backlash didn't stop at the dinner table. Within hours, my phone was blowing up with messages from extended family members. Apparently, my mother had immediately called my aunts, uncles, and cousins to paint me as a villain who was abandoning my struggling parents in their time of need. "How could you do this to them after all they've sacrificed for you?" texted my Aunt Linda, who had no idea I'd been paying their rent for years. "Your father says you've gone crazy with your new job success. Money changes people, I guess," wrote my Uncle Mike. Even my 78-year-old grandmother called, her voice quavering with disappointment. "Family supports family, Samantha. That's how we were raised." Meanwhile, Amber launched a more public attack. Vague posting on Instagram about toxic family members who only care about money, she rallied her friends, and even some of our mutual acquaintances to her cause. She strategically leaked embarrassing stories from my childhood, the time I wet the bed at summer camp, my awkward first date disaster, the period I struggled with stress-induced acne, framing them as funny memories while effectively humiliating me to our social circle. Remember everyone thought Saint Samantha was so perfect? She wrote in one particularly pointed post. If only they knew about her little incidents whenever she got too stressed about tests. Not so perfect after all. Through it all, I maintained my position. Yes, I would pay one final month of rent. No, I would not reconsider after that. Yes, I was sure about my decision. The most painful moment came when my father showed up at my workplace unannounced, creating a scene in the reception area. "Is this what you want?" he shouted as security escorted him out. "To see your parents homeless because you're too selfish to help? Is that who you are now?" My colleagues pretended not to notice when I returned to my desk with red eyes, but word spread quickly. By afternoon, HR had called me in to check on my well-being and subtly assess whether my family drama might impact my work performance. That evening, alone in Rachel's spare bedroom, I questioned everything. Was I the villain in this story? Was I abandoning my family when they needed me? The weight of generational expectations and cultural conditioning pressed down on me like a physical burden. I called Dr. Patel for an emergency session. "What you're experiencing is the extinction burst," she explained. When a manipulative dynamic is threatened, the manipulation often intensifies before it subsides. They're pulling out all the stops because what they've been doing has worked for them. And they don't want it to end. "But what if they really do need me?" I asked. My voice small. "Samantha, your father has a good job. Your sister has a job. Your mother could work more hours if necessary. They have options that don't involve exploiting you. Then why does this feel so terrible?" "Because they've programmed you to feel responsible for their happiness and comfort," she said gently. "Breaking that programming is painful, but necessary for your health financially, emotionally, and psychologically." I nodded, wiping away tears. I don't recognize them anymore. The things they're saying, the way they're acting, it's like they've become different people. Or perhaps, Dr. Patel suggested, they're showing you who they've always been, now that they can no longer maintain the facade. I knew my family wouldn't accept my decision easily, but I underestimated just how far they would go to maintain their control. The campaign against me escalated from emotional manipulation to active sabotage with frightening speed. 3 days after our Sunday dinner confrontation, my team leader called me into his office. His expression grave. "Samantha, I've received some concerning information," he began hesitantly. Normally, I wouldn't give anonymous reports much credence, but the specifics were troubling. "Someone called, claiming you're misusing company resources for personal projects and selling proprietary code." My stomach dropped. "That's completely false." "I believe you," he assured me. "Your work has been exemplary. But I need to ask, is there someone who might want to cause problems for you professionally?" I closed my eyes briefly. "My father," I admitted. "We're having a family disagreement about financial matters. He came to the office last week." Understanding dawned on his face. "I see. Well, don't worry about the accusations. But you might want to be prepared for other disruptions." His warning proved prescient. That evening, my landlord called to inform me that someone had reported suspicious activity at my apartment, claiming I was running an illegal business from the premises. The next day, I discovered my father had attempted to access my bank accounts, claiming he needed to check on his daughter's mental health because I was making irrational financial decisions. Thankfully, my bank's security protocols prevented the access, but the violation left me shaken. I immediately changed all my passwords and security questions, many of which had been based on family information my parents would know. The situation escalated further when Amber's boyfriend, Troy, showed up at Rachel's apartment where I was staying. How he got the address, I didn't know, but his message was clear. "You're tearing your family apart," he said, blocking the doorway as I tried to leave for work. "Do you know your mother hasn't stopped crying for 3 days? Is that what you wanted?" "Please move," I said firmly, gripping my phone with 911 pre-dialed. "They gave you everything, and this is how you repay them? By abandoning them when they need you most?" His tone was aggressive, his body language intimidating as he leaned into my space. "My financial decisions are none of your business, Troy. Move or I'm calling the police." He stepped aside reluctantly, muttering, "Frigid bitch," as I passed. I reported the incident to my therapist, who encouraged me to document everything. "This pattern of escalation is concerning," she noted. "They're trying to make maintaining your boundary more painful than giving in." The attacks became more personal. I returned home one evening to find a box on Rachel's doorstep containing shredded remnants of my childhood memorabilia report cards, art projects, photos with the family dog with a note reading simply, "Since you don't value family anymore." The next day, anonymous emails began arriving at my workplace account. Vague threats, embarrassing stories from my adolescence, old photos of me at awkward stages, all clearly designed to humiliate and destabilize me professionally. IT traced the emails to a public library computer, impossible to attribute directly to my family but suspicious in timing and content. When these tactics failed to break my resolve, they escalated further. While checking my credit report, another security measure recommended by Dr. Patel, I discovered a credit card I had never applied for with an outstanding balance of nearly $7,000. The card had been opened 5 years earlier, when I was in college, using my social security number and personal information. With growing horror, I contacted the credit card company and learned that the statements had been sent to my parents' address. For 5 years, my parents had been using a card in my name, making minimum payments just often enough to keep it from collections, but racking up interest and fees that damaged my credit score. The discovery left me reeling. This wasn't just a reaction to my recent boundary setting. This was long-term financial abuse that had begun years ago. They had been actively undermining my financial independence while simultaneously depending on my support. This crosses the line from emotional manipulation into potential criminal territory, my therapist said during our next session. Identity theft and credit fraud are serious offenses. I consulted with a lawyer who confirmed that I could file a police report for the fraudulent credit card. But be prepared, she warned. Family financial fraud cases often get messy. Are you ready to potentially see your parents face legal consequences? The question haunted me. Despite everything, some part of me still struggled with the idea of formally accusing my parents of a crime. They were manipulative and exploitative, yes. But did I want them to face possible criminal charges? Before I could decide, a friend from my apartment complex called. "Samantha, there are people here removing things from your apartment. They said they're your parents and you asked them to collect some belongings, but something feels off." I rushed over to find my parents loading my television into their car. They had somehow convinced the building manager to let them in, claiming a family emergency. "What are you doing?" I demanded, blocking their access to my parking space. "Taking back what's ours?" my father replied coldly. "The TV was a gift, the microwave too. If you want to sever family ties, we'll make it complete. You need to return my keys and leave before I call the police," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. "Go ahead," my mother challenged. "Explain to them why you're abandoning your family who supported you your entire life. See how that looks." In that moment, something crystallized for me. This wasn't love. It had never been love. The relationship had always been transactional. And now that I was changing the terms, they were retaliating with everything they had. I took out my phone and began recording. "I am asking you to return my keys and leave my property immediately. You do not have permission to be here or to remove anything from my apartment." My father's expression contorted with rage. "You ungrateful." "Dad," I interrupted, "the camera is rolling, and I'm prepared to show this to the police. Please return my keys and leave." They left, but not before my mother delivered a parting shot. "You'll regret this when you have no one. Family is forever, Samantha. You can't just walk away." But I was walking away, one painful step at a time. That evening, alone in my partially ransacked apartment, I had my first full emotional breakdown since this ordeal began. I sobbed until my throat was raw, grieving not just the family I was losing, but the family I had never actually had. When the storm passed, I felt different, lighter somehow, despite the chaos around me. I had survived their worst, and I was still standing. The next day, I filed a police report about the credit card fraud and requested a formal identity theft investigation. I changed the locks on my apartment, installed a security camera, and blocked my family's numbers on my phone. The time for half measures had passed. As Dr. Patel had predicted, the extinction burst reached its peak, and then, faced with my unwavering boundary, began to subside. The attacks became less frequent, then less intense, and finally settled into a low hum of passive-aggressive social media posts and occasional flying monkeys, mutual acquaintances, who would reach out with concern that was thinly veiled pressure to reconcile. Through it all, I discovered something unexpected. I wasn't alone. My colleague Jennifer invited me to lunch one day and shared her own story of financial exploitation by her parents, who had remortgaged their home multiple times and then expected her to bail them out. It took me 3 years of therapy to stop feeling responsible for their financial decisions, she confided. Setting that boundary cost me my relationship with them, but saved my future. Her story, so similar to my own, was the first of many I would hear in the coming months. Financial abuse within families, it turned out, was far more common than I had realized. It was just rarely discussed openly. Armed with this knowledge and supported by my growing circle of friends and allies, I began to rebuild my life on my own terms. The path wasn't easy, but for the first time, it was truly mine. Exactly 30 days after my final rent payment, I received a panicked call from my mother. For the first time in weeks, I answered. "We got an eviction notice," she blurted, her voice tight with anxiety. "The landlord says we're being evicted for non-payment. You have to help us, Samantha. We'll be homeless." I took a deep breath, reminding myself of all the hard-won insights from therapy. "That's not possible, Mom. Dad has been employed for over 7 months now. His salary is more than enough to cover the rent. How can you be so cold? We're your parents." Her voice rose hysterically. "If you don't help us, we'll have nowhere to go. Is that what you want? To see us living on the street? That's not going to happen, and we both know it," I replied, keeping my voice level. "You have options that don't involve my money." "What options?" "Your father's salary barely covers our basic expenses." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Dad makes $85,000 a year. Your apartment costs $1,800 a month. That math works fine without my contribution." There was a telling pause. "How do you know what your father makes?" "I saw his offer letter when I was organizing your papers, remember? Right next to the confirmation for your Cancun vacation." The line went silent for a moment. When she spoke again, her tone had changed from desperate to accusatory. "You've changed, Samantha. You used to care about family." "I still care about family," I said. "I'm just learning what healthy family relationships actually look like." I ended the call feeling oddly peaceful. There had been a time when their emergency would have automatically become my emergency. Now, I recognized it for what it was, a manufactured crisis designed to pull me back into the old dynamic. 2 days later, I was surprised to see my parents featured on the local evening news. They stood outside their apartment building, looking appropriately distressed as they described their situation to the reporter. "After raising 2 daughters and working hard all our lives, we found ourselves facing homelessness in our golden years," my father said solemnly to the camera. "Our youngest still lives with us, but our older daughter, who has a good tech job, has abandoned us." I watched, stunned, as they spun a completely fictional narrative about devoted parents betrayed by their successful but heartless daughter. They claimed my father had been unable to find stable employment because of age discrimination, and that they had depleted their savings supporting me through college. It was breathtaking in its audacity and entirely unexpected. I had prepared for private manipulation, not public defamation. Before I could process how to respond, my phone lit up with a message from an unfamiliar number. "You don't know me, but I'm your parents' neighbor. What they're saying on the news is complete BS. They're always bragging about their vacations and your sister's luxury apartment. Just thought you should know not everyone is buying their act." The message was followed by another. "Also, they've pulled this same routine with previous landlords. They're not facing eviction because they can't pay, it's because they've been throwing loud parties and the neighbors have complained multiple times." This unexpected ally was just the first. A former family friend, Mrs. Gallagher, who had known us since I was a child, reached out through LinkedIn. "I saw your parents on the news and had to contact you," she wrote. "I stopped speaking to your mother years ago after she borrowed money for a medical emergency and then posted cruise photos the next week. Their financial problems have always been self-inflicted. Don't let them make you feel guilty. These outside perspectives validated what I had come to understand. The problem wasn't that my parents couldn't afford their lifestyle, it was that they preferred not to. They had been running this scheme long before I became their primary target. The most illuminating revelation came 3 days later when Rachel called me, her voice tense with suppressed anger. "You need to know something," she said. "I just dropped by North Village to deliver some documents to a client. And guess who I saw moving boxes into the building? Your parents." "What? Are you sure?" "Positive. They were directing movers with furniture into the building. Samantha, they're not being evicted, they're upgrading to the same luxury building where Amber lives." The pieces clicked into place. Their eviction story had been completely fabricated, another manipulation tactic, designed to trigger my guilt and responsibility. Meanwhile, rather than facing financial hardship, they were moving into an apartment that cost nearly double their current place. And Amber? I checked her social media and found recent posts conspicuously absent of distress about her supposedly impending homelessness. Instead, she was excitedly posting about new neighbors with familiar-looking furniture in the background. The next day, my parents showed up unannounced at my apartment. I observed them through the security camera I had installed, noting their determined expressions as they repeatedly rang my doorbell. Finally, I opened the door but blocked the entrance. "We need to talk," my father stated flatly. "About your move to North Village?" I asked, watching their expressions shift from righteous indignation to surprise. "How did you?" "It doesn't matter how I know," I interrupted. "What matters is that you went on local news to claim you're facing homelessness while signing a lease on a luxury apartment. Did you think I wouldn't find out?" My mother recovered quickly. "We were desperate, Samantha. We didn't know what else to do." "You could have told the truth," I suggested. "You could have accepted that I'm no longer funding your lifestyle and adjusted your budget accordingly. Instead, you chose public defamation." "That's a bit dramatic," my father scoffed. "We were just trying to make you understand the position you've put us in." "The position of moving into a more expensive apartment?" I shook my head. "I'm not having this conversation again. Please leave." "This isn't over," my father warned as they reluctantly retreated. "You can't just cut off your family." "I already have," I replied, closing the door. That evening, I received an anonymous email containing screenshots of private family conversations. Someone, likely one of Amber's friends who had grown uncomfortable with the situation, had sent me group text exchanges between my parents and sister discussing their strategy for getting me to resume payments. "Sam's big weakness is guilt," Amber had written. "Mom, you should call her crying about being evicted. Dad, maybe mention health problems from the stress." My father had responded. The news segment was a good touch. Some of her coworkers might see it and pressure her. My mother's contribution. "If that doesn't work, we can try the family emergency angle again. Say Dad's having chest pains from the stress." Reading their calculated plans to manipulate me laid out so explicitly was both painful and liberating. Any lingering doubts about my decision evaporated. These people viewed me not as a daughter but as a resource to be exploited, my emotional vulnerabilities mere pressure points to be leveraged for financial gain. That night, I had the first truly peaceful sleep I'd experienced in months. When I woke, I felt different, lighter, clearer, and absolutely certain of my path forward. The final confirmation came a week later when I reconnected with Jennifer, my coworker with similar family experiences. "I've been following your situation through the grapevine," she admitted over coffee. "It's like watching my own past replay. The public smear campaign, the fake health scares, the financial manipulation my parents used the exact same playbook. How did you get through it?" I asked. She smiled, a genuine expression that reached her eyes. "One day at a time, with good therapy and better boundaries. It gets easier, Samantha. And eventually, you build a life so full of authentic relationships that you stop missing the dysfunctional ones." "Did you ever reconcile with them?" "No," she said simply. "Some relationships can't be fixed because the other people don't believe anything is broken. My parents still think I'm the problem, the ungrateful daughter who abandoned them. But I know the truth, and that's enough." Her words resonated deeply. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider that my family story might not have a neat reconciliation ending, and that might be okay. Perhaps the healthiest outcome wasn't fixing our relationship, but accepting that it had never been healthy to begin with. Armed with this perspective, and bolstered by support from unexpected allies, I made a decision. I would stop reacting to my family's provocations and start building the life I wanted, on my own terms. Their chaos was no longer my emergency. Their financial mismanagement no longer my responsibility. The path forward wouldn't be easy, but it would be mine. 3 months passed with minimal contact from my family. Occasionally, I'd see passive-aggressive posts from Amber or receive second-hand reports of my parents' latest version of events. But the direct attacks had largely subsided. I had settled into a new routine, focused on my career, rebuilding my savings, and cultivating relationships with friends who respected my boundaries. Then, on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday evening, my phone lit up with a call from my mother. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Samantha," she said, her voice uncharacteristically subdued. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened. I think we got off track as a family." I remained silent, waiting. "Your father and I have been talking, and we realize we handled things poorly. The eviction story, the news segment, it was all wrong. We were hurt and lashing out." Her words were surprising but not entirely unexpected. Dr. Patel had warned me that when direct aggression failed, many manipulative family systems would pivot to apparent reconciliation as another control tactic. "I appreciate you saying that," I replied carefully. "We miss you, sweetheart. Amber does too, though she's too proud to admit it. Would you consider coming over for dinner this weekend? Just to talk. No pressure, no demands." The invitation triggered a complex mixture of emotions, hope, suspicion, longing for the family I wished I had rather than the one I actually did. "I'll think about it," I promised, neither committing nor refusing. When I discussed the call with my therapist, her expression remained neutral. "What does your instinct tell you?" she asked. "That it's too sudden. Too easy." I sighed. "But part of me wants it to be real." "That's natural. The desire for parental approval and family harmony runs deep." She leaned forward. "If you decide to go, maintain clear boundaries and watch for old patterns reasserting themselves. Real change takes time and is demonstrated through consistent actions, not words." After careful consideration, I accepted the invitation, though I informed a friend where I'd be and arranged to call them afterward. He arrived at my parents' new North Village apartment Sunday evening, instantly noting the upscale furnishings and expanded square footage, definitely a step up from their previous place and well within what they could afford on my father's salary alone. My mother greeted me with a warm hug that felt almost genuine. My father nodded from the kitchen, where he was uncorking a bottle of wine. Amber arrived minutes after me, her expression carefully neutral as she mumbled a hello. "We're so glad you could come," my mother said, ushering me to the elaborately set dining table. "I made your favorites pot roast with those roasted potatoes you love, and chocolate cake for dessert." The apartment was conspicuously decorated with family photos, many featuring me at various ages, and memorabilia from my childhood achievements. A framed copy of my college diploma hung prominently on the wall, though they had never bothered to frame it before. The staging was obvious, but nonetheless effective at triggering an emotional response. These were the trappings of the loving family I had always wanted, arranged like a movie set of domestic harmony. Dinner began pleasantly enough. We discussed neutral topics, the weather, a new restaurant in town, a movie everyone had seen. My father refilled wine glasses generously, maintaining a jovial tone. My mother asked thoughtful questions about my work projects. Even Amber made efforts at civility, sharing anecdotes about her job without competitive undertones. For a moment, I allowed myself to hope. Maybe the distance had provided perspective. Maybe they had reflected on their behavior and genuinely wanted to repair our relationship. Then, as my mother served dessert, my father cleared his throat. "Samantha, we wanted to discuss something with you. A business opportunity I've been exploring." My internal alarm bells began ringing. "I've been looking into investment properties," he continued, pulling out a glossy brochure. "There's this condo development breaking ground next month. Ground floor investors stand to make significant returns within 2 years." "Dad," I began. But he held up his hand. Hear me out. The minimum buy-in is $50,000. With your tech salary and the money you've been saving now that you're not helping us, you could easily manage it. He slid the brochure toward me. We could go in as a family, rebuild together while securing our financial future. And there it was. The real purpose of the reconciliation dinner. You're asking me for $50,000, I stated flatly. Not asking, he corrected. Offering you an investment opportunity. As a family, my mother jumped in. We thought it would be a nice way to move forward together. Put the past behind us. I looked at their expectant faces, finally seeing the performance for what it was. The careful staging of family photos. The preparation of my favorite foods. The initial pleasantries and inquiries about my life. All of it strategically designed to soften me up for the real agenda. Access to my money. This was never about reconciliation, was it? I asked quietly. This was a sales pitch. Don't be dramatic, Amber scoffed. Dad's including you in a family opportunity. Most people would be grateful. Most people don't have family members who go on local news to publicly shame them, I countered. My mother's expression shifted from warm to wounded with practiced precision. I thought we agreed to put that behind us. We apologized. You said words, I acknowledged. But this, I gestured to the brochure, shows nothing has changed. You still see me as a financial resource, not a daughter. That's not fair, my father protested, his congenial mask slipping. We're trying to rebuild here. Your sister would never turn her back on family like this. My sister lives in this building because she prioritizes material comfort over financial responsibility, I replied. She's welcome to invest her own money in your scheme. It's not a scheme, he snapped. And your sister doesn't have that kind of money. Neither do I, Dad. I've spent the past 3 years supporting you instead of building savings. You've always thought you're better than us, haven't you? My mother's voice had lost all pretense of warmth. With your fancy degree and your tech job. Too good for the family that sacrificed everything for you. And just like that, the mask of reconciliation fell away completely, revealing the same old dynamic underneath. Nothing had changed, not their perception of me, not their expectations, not their willingness to manipulate my emotions for financial gain. I stood up, surprisingly calm despite the familiar tension in the room. Thank you for dinner. I think it's time for me to go. If you walk out that door, my father warned, don't expect another invitation. I paused at the threshold, looking back at the 3 of them, my mother's calculated tears, my father's barely suppressed rage, Amber's smug contempt. These were the people who had shaped my understanding of love as conditional, of family as transactional. I won't, I said simply, and closed the door behind me. In the elevator, I felt an unexpected sense of peace wash over me. The dinner had provided the clarity I needed. I had hoped for genuine reconciliation but received confirmation instead. Confirmation that my decision to separate was not just financially necessary but emotionally essential. As I drove away from North Village Apartments, I realized I wasn't leaving my family behind. I was leaving behind the illusion of what my family had never actually been. 1 year after I stopped paying my parents' rent, I stood in the living room of my new apartment, surrounded by friends gathered for my housewarming party. Sunlight streamed through windows unobscured by the financial anxiety that had shadowed my previous life. At 29, I was finally building the foundation I should have established years earlier. To new beginnings. Rachel toasted, raising her glass. And to boundaries that make them possible. Our small group, consisting of colleagues who had become friends, neighbors who had become confidants, and a few kindred spirits I'd met in a support group for adults with difficult family relationships, clinked glasses in agreement. My life had transformed dramatically over the past year. After 6 months of living with the constant financial pressure lifted, I had accumulated enough savings for a security deposit on a bright 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood I loved. I had maxed out my company's 401k match, started an emergency fund, and even taken my first real vacation, a solo trip to the Maine coastline, where I spent mornings hiking coastal trails and afternoons reading novels on quiet beaches. The absence of my family's chaos had created space for other relationships to flourish. Rachel and I had deepened our friendship into a sisterhood more authentic than the one I shared with Amber. My colleague Jennifer had become a mentor figure, offering both professional guidance and personal understanding born from similar experiences. And 6 months ago, I had met Kevin, a kind and straightforward software engineer who respected my boundaries and understood my complicated family history without judgment. I had heard, through mutual acquaintances, that my parents now lived with Amber in her luxury apartment. According to social media posts, she had quickly grown resentful of supporting them financially and emotionally, experiencing firsthand what I had endured for years. Her once glamorous lifestyle updates had been replaced by vague complaints about ungrateful houseguests and the high cost of supporting others. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I took no pleasure in her struggles. If anything, I felt sad that she too was caught in our parents' manipulative web, though she had arrived there by a different path. 3 months ago, a letter had arrived from my father, the first direct communication since the disastrous reconciliation dinner. Written on formal stationery, it expressed regret for how things had turned out and suggested that perhaps with time, wounds could heal. The final paragraph, however, revealed the letter's true purpose. He was exploring a new business venture and thought I might be interested in rebuilding our relationship through shared financial goals. I hadn't responded. The letter now served as a reminder of how far I had come in recognizing manipulation disguised as reconciliation. My therapist, Dr. Patel, had helped me understand that maintaining distance wasn't about punishment but protection, creating space for healing and growth that would have been impossible within the toxic family dynamic. Estrangement isn't failure, she had told me during one particularly difficult session. Sometimes it's the healthiest choice available when the relationship causes more harm than good. I had taken those words to heart, gradually releasing the guilt that had been programmed into me since childhood. I had stopped explaining my family situation to those who wouldn't understand, stopped defending my choices to flying monkeys sent to pressure me into reconciliation, and stopped expecting the closure of a happy family reunion that would likely never come. Instead, I had built my own definition of family, one based on mutual respect, genuine care, and healthy boundaries. My chosen family filled my apartment today, bringing housewarming gifts, favorite dishes, and the unconditional support I had once thought impossible. Last month, I had established a small scholarship fund at my alma mater for students from financially manipulative family situations, those who, like me, had shouldered inappropriate financial burdens while pursuing their education. The first recipient would receive assistance next fall, turning my painful experience into a lifeline for someone else struggling with similar circumstances. As I looked around my living room at the people who had chosen to be in my life and whom I had chosen in return, I realized that the most important lesson of the past year wasn't financial but emotional. True love doesn't come with invoices. Real support doesn't require repayment. Genuine family, whether biological or chosen, lifts you up rather than draining you dry. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected email from my company's HR department. I had been nominated for an Outstanding Achievement Award for a project I had led over the past 6 months. The ceremony would take place the following Friday evening. As I stood at the podium accepting the award, I looked out at the audience. Instead of empty seats where my biological family should have been, I saw Rachel cheering enthusiastically, Jennifer and her husband applauding proudly, Kevin beaming supportively, and a dozen other friends who had shown up to celebrate my achievement. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity. I hadn't lost my family. I had found it. The road to this realization hadn't been easy. There had been nights of doubt, days of grief, and moments of wavering. But through it all, I had maintained the boundaries that protected my well-being, my finances, and my future. I still occasionally checked Amber's social media, watching as she navigated the role I had escaped. Sometimes I felt a twinge of longing for the family we could have been, but I no longer confused that idealized vision with the reality of who we actually were. The truth was both simpler and more profound than I had initially understood. Family isn't defined by blood or obligation but by actions and choices, repeated consistently over time. My parents and sister had made their choices. I had made mine. And in doing so, I had freed myself to build a life worthy of the love and respect I had always deserved. Has your family ever expected financial support that strained your own stability? Have you struggled with setting boundaries with loved ones who cross financial lines? Let me know in the comments if my story resonated with you in any way. Every like, share, and subscribe helps this channel reach others who might be facing similar struggles and need to hear they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, prioritizing your own well-being isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the most necessary form of self-preservation. I'm sending strength to anyone facing these difficult decisions right now.